Before listening to our eminent speaker, I request Dr. C.S. Swati ma'am to kindly introduce her to all of us. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Lavanya. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce to you today's speaker, Sri Balu Rao Garu. And as Lavanya pointed out, fondly known as Balu. Sir is our alumni, so it's very fortunate to have you, sir. So he has completed his bachelor's in science from geology, botany, chemistry from Osmania University. And then he went on to do his master's in journalism at Indiana University, USA. And from then on, he started working in various capacities in national and international and state level newspapers. So he started his career as reporter in News Time in 1988, and from then on, he's been working in various capacities at different newspapers from last 3 decades. So some of the newspapers that he has worked are Indian Express, The Pioneer, Andhra Pradesh Times, Deccan Chronicle, The Times of India, News Bureau, Telangana Today, and so many more. And currently, he's working as political editor and senior editor at Deccan Chronicle. During his tenure, he has covered many aspects of society, and especially he was instrumental in designing and implementation of specific news contents. He has reported on human rights violation in Jammu and Kashmir, the fallout of 9/11 terrorist attacks in USA. He has reported on issues like environmental concerns, food grain management, safety for Indian nuclear installations, and so many more. Actually, it's a very long biodata that I have of Sir, but I've just given a brief introduction about the areas that he has worked. So, thank you, sir, for coming here and delivering the talk today. It is our honor to have you today here. We are looking forward to listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you thank all of you for being here. I really have no idea what your expectations are, but I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a couple of more stories. One big story, one small story. This happened way back in 2000. The American President Bill Clinton was supposed to was expected on a state visit to India, and well, Delhi was getting all dressed up for him. So was Hyderabad, because he had come to Hyderabad too then. Chandrababu Naidu was the chief minister. He had come to Hyderabad too. So all the big cities wherever he was going were all getting decked up. Roads were being laid, and buildings were being spruced up. In Kashmir, about 100 people were in a Gurudwara offering prayers. And a group of people burst into the Gurudwara, took out their AK-47s and shot 30 of those people praying dead. Most of you probably would have been toddlers. Maybe some of you were not born then. I don't know how old you are. So what happened was, we all know how much of a problem terrorism is in Kashmir, right? And late 90s, early 2000s, it was really at a peak. I'm not going to get into the merits and demerits of the government action, the merits and demerits of the politics of it. I'm not going to go into the merits and demerits of international relations. That is not my idea here. I'm just going to tell you a story about what happened there. So 30 people were killed. Not a small thing. And they were non-Muslims. There were 6. Bill Clinton was supposed to come to Delhi in another week from that day. Indian government was under intense pressure. They wanted to show the American government that Pakistan does these things all the time. Pakistan is destabilizing Kashmir. Pakistan is destabilizing India. They needed to find those who killed those 6. 4 days later, 5 days later actually, incident happened 4 days later, but on the 5th day, the news came out. The Indian Army and the Jammu and Kashmir police announced that they found 5 terrorists who were responsible for the massacre of the Sikhs. This happened in a village called Chhattisinghpura. For the Chhattisinghpura massacre, they found 5 of those who were responsible. And these were terrorists. So what do terrorists do when they come across security forces? They take out their guns and start firing at them, right? At least that's what we are told. So that's what happened. The official narrative went that 5 people were shot dead in a firefight. And it was a nasty, long firefight. There were grenades thrown. The whole shebang, whatever, the kind of a stuff you see in movies these days. People seem to be playing with grenades like we used to play with marbles when we were kids. They just take it out and pop. So that was that. That was the end of the story as far as the security forces were concerned. Bill Clinton arrived after a couple of days and the Indian government presented evidence of Pakistani involvement. This is what they're doing. Look what Pakistan is doing to us. The story ended there. For the entire country, for the rest of the world, the story ended there. 10 days after that happened, this encounter happened on 24th of March, 2000. And a few days after, 10 days after, 5 families from 2 villages, Panchaltan and Pakribal. This all happened in the Anantnag district of Jammu and Kashmir, the then united Jammu and Kashmir, the single state. They stood up and said, hey, our boys are missing. Where has my son gone? Where is my nephew gone? Where is my father? People started searching. And then it was not very hard for people to put 2 and 2 together. 5 people missing from 2 villages, 5 people shot dead. So the family said, maybe these are our boys, our fathers, our parents, our children. Then protests started. People started gathering, holding marches and protests and things like that. And one of those marches was so big that the cops had to open fire on that march. 10 people were killed. The pressure on the Jammu and Kashmir government was intense, enormous. So they did what any good government would do. They collected samples. They exhumed the bodies of these 5. The 5 bodies were, by the way, they were never handed over to the families. The security forces said, we have buried them. Because they were charred beyond recognition. They were burnt in the firefight. There is nothing left for you to see. We did it. Over. But after the intense protests after protests after protests after protests, and the protests were going out of hand, the Jammu and Kashmir government said, all right, we will do what you want. What do you want? The family said, let's do some DNA tests. They said, sure, we'll do a DNA test. That once and for all will prove whether those who are dead are related to you or not. So they exhumed the bodies, took samples from the bodies, took samples from the families, and they sent them off to a lab. A month later, in the assembly, the then chief minister, that was Farooq Abdullah, they showed up a little document. See, this is what it is. The lab says they don't match. So these are not those missing 5 people. And there it died. I was with the Times of India in Hyderabad. We had just launched Times of India in Hyderabad in 2000. This was in 2001. We were talking, every morning we meet, all the HODs meet with the editor, we have a discussion, what's happening, what's coming next, is there something we can plan, something we can talk about, something we can write, something do we need to investigate something. So our editor said, I've been hearing things about the Panchaltan and Patribal encounters. So he says, what? Apparently the DNA tests were faked. So it was up in the air, and I'll show you a few pictures of what happened there. Okay. This picture shows you all the images of the people who were killed in the Gurdwara. This is one of those old ladies mourning the loss of her son. By the way, many of the images you see here, quite a few of them, are things I picked up from the internet as part of a fair use policy. I don't own copyright. Okay. I'm not using them commercially. I'm using them only for this purpose. Just as you can use any clip from any movie if you want to do less than 30 seconds. So typically keep it to 23, 22, they can't catch you. More than that, they'll catch you. Okay. This was a story that rocked the nation. There was a lot of anger in Kashmir. Things were about to go out of hand. And all those DNA tests which the government did, and it had all these things. The story had terrorists. The story had the army. The story had the police. The story had the politicians involved. The story had religion involved. Terrorists were Muslims. The victims were Sikhs. And then there was a US president. He couldn't get more pot-boily than that, you know. If you want to write a movie story, you have everything here except the beautiful girl and the handsome boy. That's me being a bad slide maker. There he is, finally. Okay. It had everything going on for a fantastic story. And by the time Clinton arrived, it subsided. Soon after he left, it was buried. It was buried because the DNA test said nothing is connected. A year later, there we are in a small room of this size, 10 of us sitting in our office in Times of India, Hyderabad, talking about it. So the challenge was, how do we find out what exactly happened? The only way we could find out was to get an actual copy of the DNA test result. Getting a sample, getting a DNA test result copy in a case like this is next to impossible. No one's going to give it to you, even if you know which lab. Of course, we knew it's the CDFD, Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnostics, which is in Hyderabad, which is the premier DNA testing lab in the facility in the country. It's trained so many people. Now there are offshoots. There's one more in Calcutta, but CDFD is the big boss. CDFD got the sample, CDFD did the test, CDFD sent the report, and that was the end of the story. And here we are in our office thinking, there is a conspiracy behind it. Let's crack it now. That's what journalists do. That's what we do. We take the pants off these people. Let's show them. Let's find out what it is. But it was easier said than done. We knew the lab, which lab did the testing, but you had to get a copy of the test report. And those days we didn't have these mobile phones with cameras. None of these were available. It was not like someone shows you to take a quick picture and shove your phone back. No, not going to happen. They're not going to talk to you. So, what did we do? I was heading the city bureau. Then I was the Metro bureau chief at Times of India at that point of time. CDFD is in the city. So I claimed the territory. I said, CDFD is my city. It falls in the city, so it's my thing. I'm going to get it done. I sent a reporter. I said, go find out. Ask if the director wants to talk to you. Okay. These are random pictures that are associated, related with that. We'll come to the real one later. And obviously the director didn't want to talk to the reporter. I said, what Panchadhan, what Patribala, I have no clue. The reporter came back. So this is what he says. I said, no. They've done it here, so go back. So this reporter went back. 8 days, including a Saturday when he said, come back tomorrow. Even though it's a weekend, I'll be in the office. I'll see if I can find you some time. She went there at 8 o'clock in the morning, sat outside his office till 5 o'clock till they shut it and the guards shoved her out of the building. Day 8 is when the scientists there said, okay, now I know you're really serious about finding out what this is. You've been coming here just sitting there, not even moving out to go get yourself a glass of water. I know you're serious about it. But he said, I'm not going to talk to you. I need somebody senior with you. This reporter had just joined. So I was the bureau chief. So next day we went. A lot of protests happened, like I said, right? And they exhumed the bodies. Remember this face. Okay, I'll come to it later. This happened. We wrote the story. We got a copy of that document. It was just shown for exactly 5 minutes. It was shared with us for 5 minutes. In those 5 minutes, we took a piece of paper. We had a pencil with us. We made a true copy of that report. No Xerox. Nothing. For plausible deniability, the scientist left the room. He told us, he said, hey, look, there are these papers here. You shouldn't touch anything on my table, okay? I need to urgently go to the restroom. I'll come back in about 5 or 10 minutes. Don't touch anything. But there are some really important documents here. Don't touch. Obviously, I was going to touch. I'm not going to leave it there, right? So I took it out and had a piece of white paper, made a true copy. It had 2 pages, front, back, or rather front, back. What we realized was, when the Jammu and Kashmir government said, these samples do not match, they showed page 1 to the world. They did not show page 2. The page 2 gave the reasons why the samples did not match. And the samples did not match because they wanted to cover it up. They wanted to prove that these fellows, 5 people who were killed, are not related to these families who are claiming that their boys and sons are missing. So let's take a guess, random guess. What do you think they would have done? Random guess.
Replaced with other people's samples?
Exactly. That's exactly what they did. Typically, in cases like these, they take the maternal side of the blood. Paternity is always a question. Maternity is a certainty. Paternity can always be in doubt. There's no question on maternity. Who the mother is, there is no doubt. Who the father is, could be anyone. Science speaking. Okay. So they took samples and the samples were sent. Samples did not match. Page 2 told us why they did not match. They did not match because every of those 5 samples of the families they sent, they mixed them up with male blood. Where they said it belongs to some so-and-so Begum, it was a man's blood. In one sample, there were 3 mixed. I have absolutely no clue who their advisor was. But they really did not have an idea that any lab scientist Just looking in a drop of blood can tell you whether it's a male blood or a female blood within no time. It doesn't take long. I mean, not just looking at the blood, but you do whatever you need to do. But it's so simple these days. So page 2 gave the reasons why they did not match. We came back. We wrote the story. What happened? Why the families' samples did not match with those of the dead. We didn't know. At that point of time, we still did not know whether the dead were the members of those families who were claiming. But what this did was restart a whole protest movement in Kashmir. This story went nationwide, obviously. This is big. This is huge in terms of journalism. This is one of the, I'm not saying this because I was involved with it. Okay? But this is one of the most significant pieces of journalism ever to emerge in out of Hyderabad in the last 25 years. I'll bet my boots on that. Absolutely one of the finest pieces, 450 words, not even 450, they're probably just about 350 words. That's it. All it took was 350 words, but a hell of a lot of hard work, patience. So what happened later is they did a re-exhumation of the bodies. They had to. This time scientists from CDFD went to collect the samples from the families. And sure enough, what was the result? They matched. They matched. Why am I telling you this story? It's just another news report. Most of you were even too young to know something like that happened. We're talking about stories and takeaways. We'll come to the takeaway, why this story matters. There are lots of takeaways. I'm sure you understood some of them by now. I don't even have to spell those out. If somebody tells you journalism is painful, journalism doesn't pay, journalism is yuck, and I'm sold on journalism. I've been on journalism for a long time, so obviously I'll be biased. I like journalism because journalism does this. You can hold the most powerful in the country accountable with a mere 350 words that take less than 20 minutes to type. That's what a good story can do. Stories can hold people accountable. Good journalism holds. I'm going to stick to journalism, okay? That's what little I know is from journalism. That's why these stories matters. All stories matter. Whatever kind of a story you read matters. There is a purpose for it. There is a purpose for it. There is hard work also. I didn't get to be where I am today just because I have a silver spoon or something like that. I got where I am because I worked my butt off over all these years, whether academically or professionally. So anyway, this is what happened. This is, again, I'm repeating. I don't know if journalism students are here or not, but this is one of the most important pieces of journalism to emerge out of Hyderabad since 2000, in the last 3 decades. That led to the destruction of a political party forever. National Conference never won an election again. The Indian Army had to make the rounds of the Supreme Court for 17 years. Policemen lost their jobs. And most importantly, there were 5 families which were outcast as aapke ladke terrorists hai, ab dur raho humse types. They got their honor back. They said our boys are innocent. They were picked up. You remember that face I showed you? That guy's name is Zahur Ahmad Dalal. He was 24 when he was picked up outside Anantnag. The others, I'll just run through the names. They're just names. They're people. One was Bashir Ahmad Bhatt, 22. Muhammad Yusuf Malik, 23. All of these were picked up in and around Anantnag. And then there was Juma Khan, a 42-year-old laborer. And another Juma Khan. There were two Juma Khans who were picked up. They were both from another village called Branigan. Middle of the night. Imagine the terror you face. Imagine how outcast you feel as a family. Much, much later, a few years down the line after I wrote this story, I met with an MLA, CPI MLA from there, in Hyderabad. He used to represent Anantnag. He was an MLA from there. Tarigami. So I met Yusuf Tarigami there in Hyderabad. He had come for something, and I just wanted to know how are things there now in those villages. How are the families? See, we didn't follow up as journalists. We didn't follow up. We wrote the story. We did one follow up after that about the lab, the second set of samples being sent to the lab and stuff like that. But the rest of the Times of India took over. The Kashmir Bureau of Times of India, the Delhi Bureau of Times of India, the Legal Bureau of Times of India took over the other aspects of following up. What's happening in the Supreme Court, what's happening in Kashmir, and things like that. We broke the story. We told the world this is what has happened. So Tarigami, when I met him, I introduced myself. I just said, I'm Balu. He just looked at me. Are you the Balu who wrote the story about DNA? I said, yes. He gave me a big hug. He gave me a big hug. And he said, you have absolutely no idea what you people have done for those 5 families. That was all his concern was. You see, you gave them their honor back. Forget about cases being filed against those who killed and all that. You gave their honor back. Anytime you go to the village, you just go and say, I am Balu. Bachcha aapka naam janta hai abhi. They'll carry you around on the village on their shoulders. I said, that's really nice to know, That was for us the outcome was finally 5 families were found to be innocent. They got their respect back. They could move around again. But the takeaway was powerful can be held accountable. It needs hard work. It needs diligence. And it needs a spine. You need to have the courage to go ahead and write something or tell a story. Say, I am going to stick my neck out no matter what. Kya hoga? Worst case scenario, they'll sack me. And I was also young. I was 20 years younger then. I was 22 years younger then. Still had a lot of career. We stuck our neck out. The other reporter was barely a month into the profession. And she was your alum. She was your J school alum. Journalism department alum. So if anybody tells you, कुछ होने वाला नहीं है journalism पढ़ के या English पढ़ के लिख के करके, they don't know what they're talking about. We'll talk about the kind of skills that you get later. Okay. And then I'll tell you another story. When 9/11 happened, everybody knows 9/11, right? Anybody who hasn't heard of 9/11, please raise your hand here. There's no shame in saying I don't know something. Okay. The terror attack in the US on 9/11. Now, does it make sense? The Twin Towers were brought down and stuff like that. When that happened, the first 2 people to be arrested in connection with that event were Hyderabadis. Nobody knew. Even we didn't know. But as a team, we had a wonderful team that would watch over each other all the time. I keep an eye on your back, you keep an eye on my back. I know what you're doing today, you know what I'm doing today. So we keeping our radars open, we have our eyes open, we have our ears open. So what happened after 9/11 was, a lot of people were missing, a lot of people were trying to contact each other, families were calling from Hyderabad to New York, saying, I want to know what happened to my son, daughter, bhanja, beti, damad, whatever. So the state secretariat opened a control room. See, if you have anybody living in that area, near the Twin Towers or in New York, and you're not able to get in touch with them, please give us their names and your home addresses here and your phone numbers. And we will, through the External Affairs Ministry, we will try and get in touch with them because the phone lines were jammed. Phone lines were completely jammed. So I sent one of my reporters to the secretariat. I said, जाके देखो क्या हो रहा है वहाँ पे. Let us see how many people from Hyderabad are actually worried about their families in New York. He came back with a list of 18 names. Those were the 18 families which went and gave their information, contact information at this 9/11 control room, so-called control room at the State Secretariat. Typically, newspapers go to bed. We put newspapers to bed around 12:30, depending on the deadline, depending on the number of copies you print. We put it to bed. That means everything is locked up. The page is locked, goes for printing. Our bedtime was midnight. 11:55, our news editor, who's checking one last time if there is something major, something we have missed on ticker online, suddenly called me. And I was hanging around in the office. I don't know why I was hanging around in the office that night, but I was just hanging around in the office. He said, Balu. I said, what's up? Said, aren't these names familiar? One was Ayub, one was Azmat. I said, I don't remember. Why are they familiar? He said, yeah, these two names are there in that list we got from this control room. So I said, okay, what is this news report? The news report was a feed from Associated Press, a small little clip with two mugshots. These were the mugshots. They said these two people were arrested because they fit the profile of the bombers of the planes that hit US, whether it's the Twin Towers, whether it's the Pentagon, whether it's something else. They've been arrested. The only thing we had were their names. Two similar names, two people, same names in our list of families which gave the information, and one that comes from Fort Worth, Texas, in a news report. We were about to go to bed. We called our editor and said, what do we do? These guys could be guys from Hyderabad. Immediately he did what he had to do. He called he woke up the general manager and said, we are not printing right now. Ek ghanta aur chahiye humko. All of this is happening at the same time when I'm trying. Then I was the only one who was the reporter in the office. So I started calling up all the other reporters. I said, everybody come back. In the next 10 minutes, either you're in the office or you're fired. Don't come back tomorrow morning. Whoever could come quickly came, the others came. A little late, depending on the distance, but everybody came. Whoever was asked to come came, including the photographers and things like that. But the editor came rushing. I said, what do we do now? What do we do now? Oh my God. We've stopped printing. The general manager was after us. Every 10 minutes we were getting a call saying, every 10 minutes late mera hoga to mera 5,000 rupees, 5,000 copies kam ho jayenge circulation. He's worried about his problem, you see. We said, no, we need another. So we sent off a team of people. We had their addresses, right? We just had to know if these two guys were the same. That's all we needed to know. If they were the same, we had a big story. If they were not the same, it doesn't matter. सुबह में जनरल मैनेजर आएगा सबको गाली देगा ठीक है वो तो रोज की बात है वो गाली देगा बोलेगा you won't get an increment next time. Done, ठीक है, it's okay, you know. फिर पटा लेंगे बाद में. That's actually the discussion we had. And so we had the addresses. We had printouts. Fortunately, Associated Press also put out their mugshots. So we printed a half a dozen copies of these mugshots. Too late to find an office driver anywhere. So we pulled out a sports correspondent, we pulled out a business editor, a sports editor, a photographer. So those three guys became the drivers. So everybody else who was in the office, except me and the news editor, they split into 3 teams and they didn't know where to go. Old city, imagine finding an address in the old city 20 years ago. Even today, it's very hard to find an address if you just go by 3-5-26 by divided by 4 multiplied by 6. Something like that. That's how our municipal numbers are, right? I mean, I'm stretching it, but it's not easy. Well, I knew a lot of cops for a long time because for the longest of time I was a crime reporter. So I called up the Charminar ACP and the DCP and the commissioner, whatever, whoever I could call. I called the inspector. I said, look, I don't know, 3 cars are reaching your police station in the next 10 minutes. I want 3 constables to go with them who know these areas. Here is the address. ये locality, ये मोहल्ला है. ये मोहल्ला कोई जानता है तुम्हारे पास? बुलाओ, ड्राइवर के साथ गाड़ी में बिठा के भेजो. बस. That's all I want. I knew them well enough. I knew them long enough. I've been a crime reporter for a long time. So they said, okay. We had only 2 addresses, but we had 3 cars. So we found 2 constables. They gave 2 constables. They both went. It just so happened, the miracle of Hyderabad's address system, 2 different names. It was just on one side of the house. एक ही गली में, either Yusuf Guda to either some other Guda. It was like that. So both cars reached the same place. Our people knocked on the door. And it's very, very hard. This is nothing about, I'm not making any comment about culture here. This is how it works in the field. Okay? We have to be respectful. We have to be sensible about people's sentiments, their way of life. In the old city, middle of the night, I just can't knock on a door and walk into a Muslim house. I have to respect their practices. I have to respect what they do. Even otherwise, doesn't matter whose house it is. You don't go knock on somebody's door at 12:30 and say, I am a journalist. बात करो, इंटरव्यू दोगे तुम मुझे? नहीं होता है वैसा. So one of our reporters, there was only one girl in the office that day. So she was sent. Jao, you go with this fellow. Talk to him. She went in. Ladki hai, all said and done, how dangerous can she be? She went in. And she was asking questions. My editor was standing outside of the door on his mobile phone, relaying the question, relaying the answer to me. I was working, I had a phone like this, I was sitting on a computer. By then, we had already done 2 dummy stories, 2 dummy pages. One confirming that these 2 guys are from Hyderabad. And the other, this is the regular paper. So, and then suddenly I hear a big yell from my editor. I say, yes! What? Hey, yeah, this fellow is from here only. What's this one? This is Ayub. Ayub is from here. Yeah, their family has identified the photograph. Oh, we'll go back. Oh, it's a touchscreen thing, is it? Yes. Wow. Where did I go? Yeah, here we are. Okay. I did not know it was a touchscreen. Fantastic. Good to know. You guys are technologically so far ahead. So he said, Ayub confirmed. Ayub confirmed. वो तो आज मत तो confirm होगा ही होगा. And I was sitting there, I was typing the story, and the other phones kept ringing from the printing press, saying 1 o'clock हो गया, 1:10 हो गया, 1:15 हो गया, pages नहीं जा रहा है. It's a serious problem in a newspaper office if printing goes haywire. Everything goes haywire. A 5-minute delay, we sending it, by the time it is printed, it translates into a 40-minute delay. Everywhere time gets added on minute, half a minute, 2 minutes, half a minute, 2 minutes. And finally we said, I just told them, I said, okay, you tell me whatever you're telling me. The quotes, whatever information we have there. We just did, fired, story ho gaya. I said, I'm firing the copy. Talk. That was the only page that was waiting. We went, and next day we were the only ones in the entire country to have the story. We were the only ones to have the entire country, to have the story. It was too late for other Times of India editions also to pick it up. Okay. What did this do? What could have this story done for us?
Increased your circulation in the old city.
Enormously. But as people I'm talking about. My question was about what people? What did we get out of it? What did we learn about it? Kind of. See? Simple, it was teamwork. The editor, who didn't even have to move a muscle, decided he should, he should be there. So he takes responsibility, taking responsibility. If anything happens at all tomorrow, if there is a fallout of this, I am going to be taking the responsibility because I am the head of the paper. I am going to be there for you. And then sharing of knowledge, what little we know, whatever little bit I know, you know. That's why the news editor caught it. The news editor didn't have to see the list, but he gets to see everything we are talking about, because he needs to know. It's about keeping eyes open. It's about being sharp. And more than anything else, it is about teamwork. You may be the most brilliant individual, but alone you can't do anything. Absolutely. There is nothing you can do all by yourself. Right? So this story was all about teamwork. The first story was all about diligence and hard work and not giving up. It was about not giving up. It doesn't matter what profession you are and what studying you do. You give up, you're done. I mean, you might as well pack your bags, go home, save your money instead of paying it to the university. Right? Yeah, this was a follow-up. And then the FBI guys started calling us because FBI saw the story online in the Times of India. FBI also had no clue that these boys were from Hyderabad. FBI came to know about it after they read about it in Times of India, which was very nice for us. We were walking around with our collars high up that day. And the entire Hyderabad mediascape were calling us. It's a miss, right? If you're competitive, in a world of competition, you miss a big news, your editor is going to ask you the next morning. Times of India had this story, and it's not just one, two, oh my God, that's great. Okay, I'm not going to touch it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, 8. There were 8 people working on that story. And you had no clue? 8 में से कोई एक भी तुम्हारा दोस्त नहीं है जो बताएगा तुमको. This is what is happening. Hell is breaking loose in Hyderabad. FBI is going to land tomorrow morning. 9/11 happened there barely 2 days ago. It's about teamwork. There's a reason why I kind of picked stories I wanted to show you. For me, each of them represents something. It's not about saying how great a journalist I am or how great a journalist my team was. The thing about journalism is, whatever I do is fantastic, maybe fantastic news at 6 o'clock in the morning. It loses some of its steam by 10 a.m. By noon, people kind of start, ठीक है, पढ़ लिया है इसको. And by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it is raddi. I'm only as good as my next story as a journalist. If I go and tell the world saying, the same thing happens to it's pretty much the same in every field. You've done today, you have coded something, you've written a great program for Google, you're working for Google or something, whatever else chosen field of yours is. Ho gaya na? It's done and dusted. What next? What's coming next? What keeps you inspired? What keeps you going, moving from one to the other? What keeps you moving from one to the other is if you love what you're doing, if you like what you're doing. If you think you hate what you're doing, find something else quickly. You're wasting your time, you're beating yourself up, you're destroying your own future when you're doing it. Okay, some of us do jobs, some of us have to do what we have to do to keep our body and soul together. I worked as a part-time waiter in a bar when I was studying in a college. I worked as an office boy riding a bicycle across the city, delivering letters from here and there. I also worked as a medical rep. I also worked in a prawn farm. I've done all kinds of things just to keep life going. But I wanted to be a journalist. One way or the other, I wanted to see my name in print. And I became a journalist. Okay. My education had nothing to do with journalism, but I wanted to be a journalist. And I got to a journalist. Some other day, if we meet again, if you're interested, I'll tell you the story about how I became a journalist. It's far more interesting than all this. But we'll stick to this today. Okay? How can stories happen? I'll quickly run through it. I think we're running out of time. I'll quickly run through. How do stories happen? Okay? This is one of the recent ones I wrote. I'm just showing examples of my own report, not because, again, disclaimer, I'm not trying to promote myself or anything, but I own responsibility. I can take responsibility for what it is, good or bad. One of these systems. This is so cool. You know? So, this, I'll tell you how news stories happen. They happen when you keep your eyes open. I'll keep repeating that. I'll keep coming to that. Eyes open, ears open, eyes open, ears open. You know, you might ask me, does this fellow ever sleep? Yeah, I do. I can just sleep standing. Right here I can sleep standing. Thanks to the training I got when I was a medical rep with Glaxo Pharmaceuticals, traveling from village to village in a bus, you're so tired you just fall asleep. So, what kicked this off was, the state government has started this program, Palle Pragati, Patana Pragati. I'm sure all of you are aware of it. Most of you hopefully are aware of it. You should know what is happening in your own state, at least the big things that are happening, big programs, government programs and schemes. We should know. You never know, it might even be a question in one of your group exams, you know, if you're preparing for it. So I was wondering, where are they finding land for all these things? They want to set up a park, they want to set up a playground, they want to set up, where there is no, if there is no graveyard in a village, you need to create a graveyard. It's important. Those are very, very important, necessary things for a society to have. A graveyard is extremely important. So is a health center, so is a school, so is an office for the local village or local administration at that level. So I was trying to find out where all they found land, where they did not find land for all these things. Then I realized, then I came to know that most of these places, wherever they set up these facilities, they were all in forest land, because there's no other revenue land available anywhere. Revenue land is the government-owned land, which is not forest land. The government will pretty much do whatever it wants to do with that land. They can sell it to you, they can lease it out, they can do whatever they want. So, somebody told me, you know what? They're actually building a playground inside a forest. Because I was talking to people, and then I said, where? They said, in the Kawal Tiger Reserve. I said, what? Inside a tiger reserve, they're building a playground? And then it turned out to be that they were not only building it, they were building it in the core area of the tiger reserve. A core area is the inviolate area. You cannot interfere there. That is where the animals are secure. You can do song, dance, drama anywhere outside that core area boundary, but not inside the core area. That's its inviolate space. It's like your own private room. Once you're in a bedroom, once you're in bed, nobody disturbs you. It's your space. It's the animal space. And they were building a sports complex in the core area of the tiger reserve. This is how we find things again. You connect the dots. Somebody is doing something. You ask a question. Okay, this requires, what does it require the most? Two things: money, land. Does the government have money? It will find it somewhere. One way or the other, it will find it. Can it find land? No, money can be borrowed. Land can't be. But you can't add another 10,000 acres to Telangana overnight, right? It's not going to happen. It's not something. It's not available in a bank where you can come and add, put it in your pocket. There's only a finite amount of space that is available. So we were looking. I started looking at it. Then I came across this story. Again, connecting the dots. I'll tell you why connecting the dots is important as we move on. Obviously, the very next day, the National Tiger Conservation Authority said, "What the hell? You building playgrounds inside tiger reserve core areas?" They said, "Nothing doing. You got to stop." So we pat ourselves on the back whenever we get some reaction and say, "Yes, and we kind of beat our chest like Tarzan and say, "This impact, हमने किया है ये." It's still there's a thrill, you see. When you do some work sincerely, and when it pays off, when the result comes in, I have nothing. I didn't gain a single penny. I didn't gain a cent of land. But something good is going to come out of it. Again, when we write on issues like that, we don't say don't build a playground. No. Playgrounds are also equally important. Not maybe as important as a hospital or a graveyard in a village. But they are also important. We need to find alternates to do that. That's all we are saying. We are not saying don't build them. And this was another story. I'll very quickly run through it. I write a lot on conservation. I write a lot on tigers. I'm very seriously involved in tiger conservation as an individual. Sometimes I write protocols for tracking problem tigers. Yes.
Is it something to do with your survey?
No. No, Pulipaka is a small village somewhere in Krishna district. But no, a lot of people call me that. A lot of people say, "Hey, Puli, carrot, tiger, what's happening?" Good one.
In relation to Sri Pulipaka, Sri Ramchandra?
Probably. My dad was adopted. That's how we got Pulipaka. So I don't know much about that side of the clan. That's the thing. If I knew, I would tell you. But I'll find out. Pulipaka Sri Ramchandra.
Great novelist.
Yeah, I know. But I don't know. I'm sure we are related somewhere or the other. You know? वो क्या बोलते हैं? 7 degrees of separation. 7 degrees of separation. Somewhere or the other we connect, you see. Most of us get connections somewhere or the other. So I'll quickly run through this. Like I said, I read a lot of tigers. I have a lot of friends in the forest department, people who have started their careers when I started my career, who are now calling the shots. I'm still not calling the shots. They call the shots, but they're still my friends. So I get to know a lot of things. So this was a tiger which was caught in a wire trap placed by a poacher. And it was really in a bad shape. Its name was K4. They're given names, K4. It was born in a forest beat area called Kadamba beat. So K4, Kadamba K, fourth. She was the fourth in the Kadamba beat. So K4. Anyway, what this did was, they never cared about tigers. This was in Asifabad, the old Adilabad district, which is now Asifabad, Mancherial. What this did was, okay, I love tigers, I'll do anything for them. But when I wrote this story, what happened was that they were forced to start acting and actually start doing to conserve tigers. The more important thing was whether this tiger lives or dead is immaterial. It's an individual animal. Conservation is always concerned with the species, not with an individual. Individual of a species does not matter for conservation. Even when a time comes to conserve humans, they're not going to look at individuals, they're going to look at species. We see them in all those disaster movies, right? Somebody gets picked randomly, the boyfriend gets picked and the girlfriend gets left out, or the baby gets picked and the mom is left out. Exactly what happens in wildlife conservation too. Individuals don't matter, the species matters. So what happened was, there was a lot of work started in those two areas, in those two districts, which are actually the corridor areas for the tigers to move in from Maharashtra into Telangana. That was the fallout of this. This poor thing disappeared. It's most likely died 2-3 years ago. The construction was really, really bad. It was a steel cable. Imagine if your normal waste is like this, and then this is the waste you live with. That's what happened to it. And then you find stories that are practically Bollywoodish, Hollywoodish. It's just a matter of, again, being able to see. How do you get to see what the possibilities are? That comes with a lot of reading, a lot of awareness about. You read a lot, you learn a lot. You figure out the moment you see something, you say, this has potential. You do that all the time. When you see an idea, when you see an Instagram picture, when you see a YouTube, or when you're studying, when you're a chapter or something, you get an idea, say, this has more, this is lot, there's more that can be done with this. This was one such incident about 2018, okay, that's visible. 2018 there were floods. Kadam Dam, one gate was about to be blown out. Okay, it got jammed, it was about to be blown off with the pressure of the water. Kadam Dam has been in the news again recently. I hope you people follow news. If you don't, do. I'm not saying read my paper, but follow news. Learn what's happening around you in the world, because that's pretty much will decide what will happen to you in the days and months to come. Doesn't matter which newspaper you read. You need to be aware. You need to have some situational awareness about what is happening around you at a micro level, at a macro level, and at a larger national level, and maybe international level, if you have the patience and the time. So what happened was, this happened, and then there was this gate about to be blown off. That was all the information we had. And so somebody said, we all went and did some repairs. I said, बारिश हो रहा है, अंधेरा है, लाइट नहीं है, कीचड़ है पूरा, रोड नहीं है, right? 8 tons का gate है. What is battering you from there? How the hell did you do it? That was my question. There was no power, there's nothing, you couldn't even walk in that mud. Knee-deep mud that is sucking your feet inside. So what did you do? It really turned out to be like one of those disaster movies that just about stopped at the very last minute. They had to drag their motorcycles through mud. They had to drag equipment through the mud, knee-deep mud. Somebody had to hold small torches. People had to tie themselves to each other so they didn't get washed away. And they managed to repair the stupid gate. Okay. It could have been a simple report saying, gate was damaged, gate was repaired. I could have gone home in half an hour finishing that. I spent about 3 hours talking to people on the phone. I was in Hyderabad, they were all in Hyderabad, Nirmal. I spent about 3 hours talking to people on the phone, finding out not every word that you talk gets into a news report, by the way, right? You will not read anything more than 450 words. Let me tell you, that is scientifically proven. 400 words, your patients start waning. 450 words, you kind of pull yourself. Beyond that, you'll want to take an axe and find the fellow who wrote that thing. You want to butcher that chap. If you can't tell me the story, what it is in 300 words, why the hell is he even continuing with this? So 400, 450 words is a cutoff. Typically. You won't read more than that. Nobody reads more than that. But don't tell that to your teachers. Okay? I'm talking about journalism, not about your textbooks and the papers you read and the chapters which are 30 pages, 40 pages. I've been there as a PhD student, so I know. It's hell. You really want to sometimes. Well, we'll talk about it some other time. So again, we'll come back to each of these stories very, very quickly. I just want to run through some interesting stuff I did and what I learned in that process about what it is. Oh yeah, animals, by the way, make great subjects for storytelling. Okay, this is Susie, the chimpanzee in Hyderabad, at the Hyderabad Zoo. It was her birthday, so they strung some little fruits for it, for her to enjoy and all that. But soon after that, Susie died of old age. By the way, I'm the only journalist in this country who writes obituaries for wild animals that die in the zoo. I think if an animal being in the zoo and a few lakh people would have interacted with it over its lifetime, its story needs to be told. I believe in that. It's like, what would you talk about if you had a pet that passed away? You will talk about your pet, whether it's a cat or a dog or a fish, whatever it is. You talk about it. So I write obituaries for zoo animals which die. Okay? I find it very humbling to do that. And I think I'm blessed that I'm able to do that. I tell stories about these creatures which nobody has heard of. So I write stuff like this too. And then we also write stuff like this. See, small things, insignificant things, what people might think are very, very normal, very, very common, are very extremely important. This happened during a quick thing at the OGH. Saline sticks were not there, so people were getting branches and then stuck them up and उसमें से bags hang हो रहा है. A hospital can't be like that, right? So we wrote a story about it. Oh, by next day there were 50 new saline stands. They were being trundled, they were being dragged across everywhere. Tuck, 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 being put. Which is good. Patient doesn't have to worry. Patient is worried. The attendants are even more worried. You don't want to be searching for a branch, some stick somewhere when your uncle is about to die because 5 minutes late हो गया, injection में पानी नहीं जा रहा है. You know? What does this show? This shows how what we take for what we think is normal shouldn't be the normal, need not necessarily be the normal. The normal is having a proper stand, not this. So this kind of falls under public service, you see. It made a lot of news and everybody laughed at the OGH management, health minister. Rajendra was the health minister, he's a good friend of mine. He called me and said, Kya, Balu, why do you do this? I said, hey, you do your job, I don't have to do this, you see. You may be a friend, we may know each other, but doesn't mean that I'm going to stop doing my job just because you happen to be a friend. And then you also find interesting stories from here and there. The BJP had a big meeting here recently, and somebody was talking about this woman from Karimnagar coming and cooking the authentic Telangana food for them. I said, I want to talk to her. I want to talk to her and find out what she feels. Prime Minister के लिए खाना बना रहे हो यार, बार-बार हर किसी को चांस थोड़ी मिलता है PM को खाना वाना बना के खिलाने का. It's just a human interest story, you see. For her, it's the crowning achievement of her life. She never dreamt of it. That's what she told me. I mean, we get to do all these things as a journalist. Okay, it's not always boring press conferences by stenographer के साथ लिखो. No, we get to do a lot of things. And we also get to do stories like this. This was my colleague. He's a crime reporter, Naveen. Okay? Somebody lost a bicycle. Fellow went and gave a complaint. Who cares? Right? If somebody loses a bicycle. वो भी घिसा पिटा, जंग पकड़ा, rusted. Those spokes नहीं है पहिए में एक में. We did. We decided to care about it. If a man goes to a police station and lodges a complaint saying that I lost my bicycle, my life depends on it, we said we will care about that man's life. And we followed it up. We followed it up with the police every day, morning, evening, morning, evening, morning, evening, morning, evening. Cycle mela, cycle mela, cycle mela, cycle mela. They got heartily sick of it. Then they found it out. Otherwise, they wouldn't have bothered about it. Honestly, they would not have bothered about it. We forced them to look at CCTV cameras. We pestered them so much that they had to look at CCTV camera. यहाँ में दिख गया, ठीक है, यहाँ से bike, somebody was dragging it away. यहाँ से next camera किधर जाता भाई, पकड़ो, ढूंढो. Hafta 10 din laga. Took about a week or 10 days. But by God, that man got his bike back. He got his bicycle back. After he got his bicycle back, we thought we should go and talk to him and write about it. We get to do these things. Very exciting. People might not think, क्या यार cycle बहुत cycle घूमते हैं. No, who even rides a bicycle these days anyway? We decided to care. We said, no, we will care for the smallest of the small people. Those who have a telephone, those who have access, we can call friends, family, whatever it is. We can exert some influence. We can exert some whatever else we can exert and get our things done. But the poor, the small cannot do it. They don't have a voice. They don't have the access. We said we will bat for those people. I was heading the metro. I was the metro editor when we did that story. I hadn't moved to the political department yet. Oh, by the way, a lot of people ask me when I started journalism. So I keep telling them that I started very young, calling up my sources. But, that wasn't the case. I started writing when I was in my intermediate. I started writing freelance. I wanted to see my name in print. So I would write articles and send them to different newspapers. Two of them got published before I became a journalist. One in Deccan Chronicle, one in News Time. News Time used to be owned by Enadu long back. See, when you have a lot of information, what happens? It can be very, very confusing. Completely confusing. You have to get to the core of it. Exactly what you do when you study a paper. Exactly when you do when you're studying a textbook. Right? That's what we do. You go to the core of the issue and you find your answer. So a lot of confusion. When we see information, there is enormous amount of confusion. Trust me, each of those little stories didn't happen just like that. It takes 4, 5, 6 hours of hard work before we write those 250, 300, 400 words. You don't want confusion. Right? Yeah, I definitely don't want to be there. I don't know if it is Asia or Africa we are talking about. Right. So what do? I read. I read a lot. I've always read a lot. I read a lot. Not as an obsessively reading, but I read. I read a lot. And I love Calvin and Hobbes' strip. So that's why they're there. And you notice things. Once you start doing it, you notice things. I'll tell you 2 small tricks you can do, anybody can do. Okay. You notice things when you're going by. This is on the Khatawat flyover. They have a nice little painting where there's a scuba, not even scuba diver. What is the other diver called?
Deep sea diving.
Deep sea diving. Thank you. The deep sea diving, where they have the lead weight shoes and all that. So they have deep sea diving, they have a shark, they have some fishers and all that. I couldn't resist taking a picture. Saying, this is what Hyderabad is going to be like if you get flooded. GHMC has already warned you. Don't blame them. They have put it out right there on the Khatawat flyover. It's there. You haven't seen it. It's your problem. Not their problem anymore. And when you see, you also see, sometimes you see the pathos, you see the trouble. This was at the peak of the black fungus fear we had. I went to the ENT hospital, which was the nodal area for black fungus cases, Koti, ENT hospital. I went to talk to the doctors, and I saw this man sitting there with this old woman. You can't see it very, very clearly, but I can describe it. Her nose was black. It was blocked. Her eyes were black. It was the black fungus. Okay. She could barely breathe. Her mouth was black. And the doctors did not know what to do. They knew she was dying. There was no way out. She was dying. There was no way that she could have survived. She was far too gone. The choice was of getting a bed. Do I give a bed to somebody who we know is certainly going to die? Do I give a bed to somebody who has a chance of living? That's what army doctors do in the field, by the way. Okay. They're very brutal when it comes to it. That fellow will just run around those injured in the field and say, no, 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 yes, pick them up and go. These guys are far too gone, just give them painkillers and go. Morphine injection, they don't niklo yahan se. At least the person doesn't know the pain as he's dying. Doctors face these moral dilemmas, ethical dilemmas all the time. Where do I spend my time and energies on? Do I save somebody who has a chance, or do I fight with somebody, try to save somebody who we know has absolutely no chance? The person is going to die. We learn a lot. I learn a lot when I go and this conflict. You see, what is important? It's a very complex question, and we all have to find our own answers. There's no single answer to it. It all boils down to what we have learned, how we have been brought up, what our values are. A doctor's values are very, very simple. I have to save a life of a person whom I can save. Simple. He or she makes a choice. It just accidentally happened. I was walking by and there was this person sitting there and I just said, ఏమైంది అంటే ఇట్లైంది సార్ మా అమ్మ సార్ నేను రాత్రి నుంచి వచ్చినాం సార్ తీసుకోవట్లేదు సార్ లోపల. So I went and asked the doctor, what happened, bhai? So the doctor said, so she's dying. What can I do? He doesn't understand. I said, obviously he doesn't understand. She's his mother. He's not as well educated as you or me, you know. I'm not saying I'm well educated, but you certainly are. You're a doctor. So there's a way of you telling him, or at least make them comfortable. You know, put them somewhere. Let them. You know, kuch bhi nahi hai to at least get a cot or something. Put it under the tree where they can rest. Do something. Of course, they did later, but she passed away. But this was in the afternoon, but night when I went and checked, she had passed away. So again, keep your eyes open. For me as a journalist, this was a fantastic story. As a story goes, this was fantastic. But it also highlighted the crisis that was going on. Okay. And then we come across things like this. This is latest. This was published yesterday. Again, one of my colleagues. We had this monkeypox scare. I'm sure all of you know there was a suspected case of monkeypox from Kamareddy and all that. Anyway, it so turned out he doesn't have monkeypox. It is something else, right? But what they did was they stuck him into a PPE kit. Any doctor knows that if you have any kind of a pox, the first thing is you should let the body breathe air. So you wear nice loose fitting clothes, simple lightweight cotton, and keep the person separate, isolated. That's what the quarantine hospital is for. That's what the Ronald Ross Institute is for, what we call fever or quarantine hospital, right? Quarantine is nothing but corrupted quarantine hospital. So, just like Rajamahendravaram became Rajamandri, quarantine became quarantine. So we found this out because our photographer managed to sneak in and get a picture of this patient. And when I looked at it, I was actually on sick leave. I was running around hospitals with a back pain myself. When I saw this picture, I called the reporter and said, hey, have you seen the photograph? Find out if a patient like this with pox should be in a PPE kit. PPE kit is unbreathable. It doesn't breathe. You'll sweat. You would have seen a lot of pictures during peak of COVID, how doctors were having those rubber marks all over their body and sweat. And when they take their PPE kit out, they're just drenched inside. That's the last thing you want a pox patient to be having, drenched in sweat. So we wrote the story. Last night it was discovered that he didn't have monkeypox. And this morning, our photographer took another picture. I didn't have the time to get it in. He was made to wear, scrubs. He was given a pair of scrubs to wear. We said, fine, good. At least we got this man out of the PPE kit. And work takes us all kinds of places. If you're a journalist, you get to go all kinds of places. That was in some ruins in a forest. This was in a tunnel. one of the Kaleshwaram project underground tunnels when it was being constructed. And sometimes you see, you have know the place, you have to write, what do you do? Somebody who was passing by took a picture and then asked me, tapped me on my shoulder and said, sir, aapka number dijiye, I just took a photograph of yours. Give it to you. This was at a Rahul Gandhi public meeting. I had to stand and take notes and there was nothing, there was a fire engine which just came in there. So I said, this looks perfect like a table. You sit and do wherever you have to do. News gathering doesn't give you the luxury of ideal working conditions. Reporting never gives you the ideal working conditions. Okay, so what are the takeaways? Okay, what are our takeaways? They're very, very simple. Okay. Attention to detail. Right. Attention to detail is important. And then you stay cool under pressure. You have to stay cool under pressure. You're trying to tell the world something you've come to know and which you think people need to know. See, I don't have to educate people. That's not the role of a journalist. That's not what we are here for. That's not what I am here for. I am here to do my best to inform people on things I believe they need to be informed about. That will impact their life, either directly or indirectly, or make them think about the society they are living in. I'm not here to reform anybody. But if they notice something the next time, maybe they will help that man without a voice, that bicycle man, old man with a man who lives in a one tin room house with 2 children and a wife, and who survives on his bicycle. Okay, and we work under deadlines. I told you the story about the 9/11 suspect Ayub and husband. We were under tremendous pressure. Trust me, if you were to check the blood pressure of a journalist at 8 p.m., you would probably want to drag that person straight, put him into an ICU or her into an ICU. Say, you're going to die like this. That's the kind of a pressure we face. Okay. That's pretty much like how it is for us at the end of the day. You know, what mood is that? We are snapping at each other sometimes in the office. Fine. Little fireworks go off. And what is this story doing here? It is because attention to detail. Okay? This is something I did just a few days ago. About 320 words or 270 words or something like that. 244-page report. It's a 244-page report on the state of farmers and their finances in Telangana. I had to distill everything down into one simple point that people will understand. One thing that will tell the people who read the story the plight of the farmer in the state. I have nothing against the government. I just do my job. Everybody hates me equally, by the way. The government hates me, the BJP hates me, the Congress hates me. Everybody hates me. That means I'm doing my job right. So the whole point is, if I pay attention to detail, this little line about 2.5 lakh farmers' bank accounts have turned into non-performing assets, which means they will never again in their life get a loan. Never again. From any bank, any kind of a loan, let alone a farm loan. It's significant, it is important. You have taken a whole chunk of farmers out of the banking system. You have forced them to depend on money lenders who will completely suck their blood and let them die. It was a 245-page report, but I had to go through it very, very quickly within a couple of hours to find what I can find. Attention to detail comes with practice. You do it, you see a lot of things as you go along. But this was the only takeaway for me from that 244-page report. There were a lot of other things, but this was the most important thing to me. And that's why I included this story here. Attention to detail. You pay attention to detail, you will find that little diamond that has been tucked, that's tucked away somewhere. You will find that. When you do that, let's say you're taking an exam, you write that answer, you'll see the difference between the marks you score and somebody else scores. All teachers are not dumb. They know exactly what we are doing. Okay, this is the big picture. Everybody wants media to be the watchdog. Right, that's the classical role of the media, watchdog. You keep a watch. If somebody comes, you bark, and you say this is going wrong, that is going wrong, which is pretty much this is pretty much true. You see, the B type is the kind of a watchdog everybody wants. The A type is the one nobody wants. And the A types is the kind of a watchdog we want to be. It's not always easy. Let's face it. There are times when we have to shut down, we have to tone down what we write. We have to do that. Everybody has to do that. Everybody does it. Everybody does it. But within those limitations, we still do a lot. Okay? So this is what we do. Week after week after week after week. We do a little watchdog kind of a thing on the civic administration. We give a voice to the people. In Deccan Chronicle, they send us pictures, they send us little write-ups about their problems, and then we follow up on them. Not every one of them we cannot follow up on every one of them, but we follow up on quite a few of them. Okay, this is what everybody thinks media is managed and all that. This is how, it's not always necessarily the case. If somebody tells you the entire media is managed, they don't know what they're talking about. They absolutely have no clue what they're talking about. And if somebody tells you, communication kya hai, kuch nahi hai, why do you want to learn English, why do you want to do this, why do you want to get a journalism and all that, it's a pain. Let me tell you something. What has journalism taught me? What were my takeaways? The takeaways can be different for each one of us, you see. Depends on our background, depends on our aptitude and pursue, how much interest we have. For me, it taught me how to stay cool under pressure. No matter what the situation is. I might snap at my colleagues, but it's cool because we have to be cool. Otherwise, we can't think straight. The more under pressure, the straighter you can think, the more successful you are because you're focused. You're not getting distracted by your anger and irritation. It comes with a lot of practice. It comes with a lot of sacrifice. And then you learn attention to detail. The little things might matter. Small little things matter. If you're writing on a crime, if I'm reporting on a crime, it matters to me. It matters to me what time the crime happened. It matters to me what the police did to investigate. It matters to me what the DNA report said. That I question. How can a DNA report, how many pages does a DNA report have? That was the first question we actually asked ourselves that day. They showed one page. How many, कितने page होते हैं एक DNA test report में? 5 families हैं. That means each family has to be cross-matched with 5 samples of the dead, 5 of the dead. That means we have 25 sets of tests. All of that fit into one page. That was the first question we asked ourselves. Then we said, it can't be right. There must be something more to it. So you pay attention to detail. And then we make complex information. How to make complex information more understandable. Any kind of a communication, any kind of a language you learn, this is what it teaches you. Making complex information more understandable, like that farmer story I told you about. Right? And then we learn how to meet deadlines under pressure, day after day after day after day after day, we do that. And we are able to explain things without meandering all over the place. At least I don't do it when writing. Maybe during speaking I do. I don't know. When I write, I don't meander. I go straight. And what does it do at the society at the larger level? These are the individual takeaways. For it doesn't matter who it is, what kind of communication you are. At a larger level, it's the watchdog function. The most primary important function that media does is watchdog. Stories, that's what stories do. Stories hold the powerful accountable. And then we it can be a voice for the voiceless, like the bicycle man who lost his bicycle. He didn't have money. My reporter was in tears when he came back. Said he insisted on going out and buying a piece of some sweet for my reporter. We said, "आप लोग पीछे पड़े इसलिए मेरा bicycle cycle मिल गया मेरे को." Makes you feel, that it's a life worth living. See, it doesn't necessarily have to be a 5-star banquet and a big dance or a party or an award, you see. Something simple like this can make a lot of difference. Makes you feel good about yourself, makes you want to do something more. And at a societal level, at a larger level, you become the voice for the voiceless. You inform people about things that we think they should know. And if they think they don't need to know, believe me, they have no problems in conveying it to us. We get all kinds of messages, emails and stuff like that. So why the hell are you wasting my time with this report in the paper? With a lot of expletives also. We Hyderabadis are very free with expletives. Mom, dad, brother, sister, bhanja, sab mil ke aate hain. Everything gets dumped at us quite often. We take it as a feedback. And yeah, well, that's about it. Any questions? I took a long time. I'm sorry. I don't know how long. Yeah, I think went way beyond my time. I'm very, very sorry about that. But I get excited when I talk about journalism.
So when are we having a talk about how you became a journalist?
That's actually a long story, but well, I'll quickly tell you in 3 sentences if I have your permission. Just 2 minutes. My father was a Telugu teacher. I'm the elder of 2 siblings. My father desperately wanted me to learn English. He thought English is the future, Telugu has no future. And he used to buy a newspaper every Sunday, Indian Express, when I was a kid. And one day I saw a name which said A. Balu in Washington. I went around the house running around like a madcap saying, "My name has been printed. Mera naam chhapa hai paper." So my dad said, No, it's not your name. You're P. Balu, that is A. Balu. I said, "No, Balu is Balu. No, what difference does it make?" He said, No. A makes a difference, P makes a difference. You're a P. Balu, that's A. Balu. So I said, "What do I do?" He wanted me to learn English, right? That's why he was buying that newspaper. Dekhega, cartoons dekhega, thoda interest aayega. Said, "You must learn English." He was a damn good teacher, by the way. I'm sure he must have been. He latched onto that opportunity and then he told me something. He cheated me. He really, really cheated me. He was such a cheat, my father. He said, "Do you know Washington is in the US?" I said, "Yes." I was 11, I think then. Okay. This happened when I was 11. I said, "And do you know that even beggars in America speak in English?" I said, "Wow. Oh my goodness me. ఇక్కడైతే తెలుగులో మాట్లాడతారు కదా, అక్కడ ఇంగ్లీష్లో మాట్లాడతారా? అవును రా, అక్కడ ఇంగ్లీష్లో మాట్లాడతారు. బిచ్చగాళ్ళు కూడా ఇంగ్లీష్లో మాట్లాడతారు. నువ్వు ఇంగ్లీష్ నేర్చుకోతే ఎట్లా? I said, "Oh my God, I have to learn." I started reading. Believe me, I read like a madcap. I read anything and everything and anything and everything I could read in English. My father passed away when I was 13. And much later, a few years later, as you grow up, you realize you learn about things, right? One day it suddenly hit me, I said, "What the hell? Everybody in the US speaks in English. This man cheated me." This was wrong. A father should never cheat a son or daughter like that. But that's what got me going. And someday I wanted to see my, that's the short of the long story. I wanted to see my name in print. And I got into journalism. I pestered the life out of an editor for 18 months. 18 applications I gave, 1 month after month after month. On the 19th month, he just came and said, "Enough, come take a test." So he gave me a test, I got a job. This was in 1988. I started the News Time, which was owned by Enadu. Enadu used to run a very, very good English newspaper called the News Time those days. I started with newspaper. That's how I got into journalism, and I find it very, very exciting. I find it very interesting. After all these years, I still think when I go to work, I feel like it's my first day at work. I haven't lost the sense of wonder. If I lost the sense of wonder, we wouldn't have seen some of those stories, you see. And I think it's very, very important that we all maintain that sense of wonder. We should not get jaded with what we know. There is always something else. Every time I see a green leaf, it makes me wonder, why is it green and not red? If you need to have the child in you, you want to be a good student, you want to be a good scholar, you want to be good at whatever, you need to have the child in you. Don't let the child die. No matter what, don't let the child in you die. Imagine, remember all those wonderful times you were trying to explore, find out things? You broke open a lock or something to find a clock to find out how it works, and then dad came and gave one tight slap. But that's what it's, and that's how I got into journalism.
So what was the pressure on you when you broke the story of Jammu and Kashmir?
Oh, enormously. We got calls from Jammu and Kashmir police. We got calls from somebody claiming they were from the army, and they said, "How dare you write stuff like this? आप लोग नहीं बचेंगे." This was one conversation I received. आप लोग नहीं बचेंगे. तो ठीक है यार, हम तो नहीं बचेंगे, आप तो बचने वाले तो हो नहीं. You've been exposed. You're finished. It's not going to save you. You do something to me or my reporter, it's not going to do anything to you. You're finished anyway. We do get sometimes, but most of the time, see, the thing about media is, if you have a secret, if you have a big story, if you hold it to yourself, you are vulnerable. If it's once out in the public, it's a different story altogether. But it doesn't happen all the time. The stakes were very, very high at that point. You see, there was the army involved, army got insulted. Farooq Abdullah was a very man with a large ego. We practically stripped him naked in public. So, yeah, we did get a few blowbacks.
Anything happen in reality like a
No.
part of this call?
No. We were geared up for it.
And what is your, what do you do to stay away from the stress that you have every day?
I enjoy what I do, so I don't feel stressed. No, honestly, I really enjoy what I do. I love what I do. I think there is an idiot sitting somewhere on the 5th floor in my building paying me at the end of the month to go and have fun. I enjoy what I do. I really do enjoy. I feel this. There's stress sometimes. Sometimes I go into the jungle for a day or two and I take a break. Yes.
Sir, I had this question. You've been in multiple news organizations by now, right, sir? So, when I was interviewing with Siyasat, their writing style is more towards social justice, left, to the poor left, in that way. So, how does your, the different news organizations and their ideology, how does it give you space to write what you love to? Or how does it affect your
Okay.
writing style?
Okay. I'll break it down into two parts, your question. Okay. One is, are you doing the job because you need a job to keep your body and soul together? To put some food on your table and that of your family? That will determine much of how you're going to fall in line or not fall in line. Okay? That's one part. That's how some people approach a job. A lot of us approach a job like that because you desperately need earning something to keep yourself going. That's fine. When it comes to the intellectual part of it, whether you subscribe to the point of view of your owners or the management, you fall in line. It is their paper, it is their point of view, they believe in something. Had you been a reporter when N. Ram was the editor for The Hindu, you would be a left-leaning reporter today. Right? N. Ram is very leftish. Sorry, leftish. So, N. Ram is very leftish. So how do you make a compromise? But within that, you will always find room to tell the stories you want to tell. See, it's a navigation. It's a way of navigating. You learn. But if you have an open mind, if you don't have an open mind, you say nah, then you're finished. There's no hope for you. You as in whoever is there in that kind of a situation, there's no hope because you're at constantly loggerheads. You're always watching over your shoulders. कौन है पीछे से कौन भी देख रहा है क्या बोल रहा है? Yesterday I got into an argument with him. So he said, I won't write this or I won't write that. What happens? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
So there are, we live in a country where there is a story in every street or any place.
Yeah.
So how much big or smaller part does conjecture play in selecting which story to tell and which ones to ignore? Which ones worth pursuing and which ones not?
Okay. Let me answer it this way. Every story needs to be told. Okay? Every story needs to be told. There is a limitation of space, especially when it comes to print. There's only so many stories I can tell over so many pages. Right? And then there is this humongous happenings that have to be informed to the people. Though everybody says, आजकल TV है, कौन देखता है, paper कौन पढ़ता है, da. But newspaper is still the medium of choice when it comes to reliability. When you want reliable news, you turn to print. There's a space is always a concern. When I can only tell you about print. Okay, print is where my expertise lies, or my experience lies, not expertise. I'm sorry about the word. My experience lies. So, how do we pick what to tell? We go by the gut and experience. You know what? See, over a period of time, you've seen life, you've seen the world, you've seen the country, you've seen the state, you've seen the people. You develop a sense of what matters to them. What are the things that are important, or what are the things that will provide them a little bit of a relief on a really terrible day? Heartwarming. The bicycle story was a heartwarming story. You know.
So there must be many complaints in police station similar to that.
Yes.
But you pursued that story.
Yes.
Why?
Because it was a completely different kind of a complaint. One, a bicycle. What does a bicycle, for me, what does a bicycle represent? A bicycle represents a person who cannot afford a scooter. Unless you are down and out in your life, why will you ride a bicycle? Tell me that. Right? My father rode a bicycle all his life. He was a school teacher. He went to a bicycle. From Medipur to Amberpet, he went on a bicycle every day. That because he wanted to save a few pennies for the kids so he could put me in a private school and where I would learn English. That was his dream. But why would anybody want to ride a bicycle unless you are a fitness freak living on the west side of the city? You know? You ride a bicycle because you have no option. You can't afford a scooter. You can't afford a 50cc, 100cc TVS moped. So you're down, you're out. So we said, let us find out if the city police is up to the task of helping somebody who's really down and out. A rich person goes and gives a complaint, the complaint gets solved. Will the same thing happen? Or can we make it happen for a really, really poor man? That's why we went after it.
Sir, continuation to it. Sorry to disturb. The digital news thingy has come up, right? Like it's the prominent field now where people go through news, right, sir? The problem with it is you have like the pressure with print media, but the digital media has like double pressure than that because every 2 hours or 1 hour you get a news and then you got to work on it and then you send it like.
Okay. I have no clue. I have no clue. I haven't worked in digital media. But I suppose the pressure cycles are shorter. The pressure cycles are shorter. And the relief cycle is also quicker. You find out, put it on TV, you're done. I don't do immediate follow-up or anything like that. I move on to something else. I have friends in the, I can only talk about television media. Okay, I have friends in the television media who say they are live here, they have the video. After this, I don't have to do anything. It's for the editors to deal with it. So that's what happens. I think we are short. We have overshot by a long way. I think I'll wind it up here. Thank you so much. Very kind of you to have listened to me patiently. I hope it was of some interest to you. If it has been, then I consider myself lucky. If it hasn't been, I'm not responsible for inflicting myself on you. It is them.